Good evening everyone, my name's Daniel, thank you for joining me. So, tonight I'm going to be talking about a video that's recently been released by Kate Fairman. Now, Kate Fairman is a member of the New South Wales Legislative Committee. She released a video talking about drug and alcohol testing and medicinal cannabis.
That was medicinal cannabis.
Medicinal cannabis was legalised in Australia almost a decade ago, but here in New South Wales, it's just crazy that people who take this, if it contains THC, they're at risk of losing their licence if they test positive for THC at a roadside drug test. Thing is, THC can stay in your system for days afterwards.
Okay, Kate, here's my first correction. So there is no possible way for a therapeutic amount of cannabis to stay in your oral fluid for days. It is really hard to get it past a couple of hours, but definitely not days. Even those quasi-therapeutic doses where it's a super high, stupid amount of cannabis they give, that will not stay in your system for days. We're talking hours, not days, when we're talking about oral fluid. If we're talking about urine, potentially blood if you're Snoop Dogg, and hair, absolutely, days, weeks, maybe months. But when we're talking roadside drug testing, oral fluid, absolutely not days.
What this means is that thousands of people are actually having to make the decision to stay on pharmaceuticals like opioids for chronic pain, and they can drive.
Okay, a member of the Legislative Council quite literally does not know the laws that she is responsible for. Right, so New South Wales has this fantastic part of the Road Transport Act called Section 111, and that allows a police officer, if they have a reasonable suspicion of you being impaired while behind the wheel, they can demand a sample of your urine, oral fluid, or blood. Now, what they usually do is a roadside drug test, but if they believe you are impaired by something like heroin, benzos, opioids, something like that, that will not show up on a standard roadside drug test, then what they will do is they will arrest you and take you to a hospital or a police station where they will obviously get a sample of your urine or your blood. If you refuse, this is just like refusing any other drug test and it is a criminal offence. This happens literally all the time. Now you, being a member of the Legislative Council, could easily toddle on down to New South Wales Health Forensic Analytical Science Service and ask them for the data of how many tests per year, whatever they do. But I don't have those numbers on hand. Now, because it's just as routine as any other sort of drug testing the police do, you don't hear about it all the time. But when we do hear about it, it's usually because something terrible has happened, and there's two notable cases that are quite recent that I'll talk about. There's Kelly Litticoat. Now, Kelly Litticoat was driving on the Bruce Highway up in Queensland. She was absolutely off her face on benzos and opioids. She killed two innocent tradies that were on the side of the road helping someone. That was Aaron Pitt and Leighton Bartlett. So she just passed out at the wheel and killed both of those innocent men. Now, for whatever reason, the Queensland judiciary decided that that offending was only worth a 5-year prison sentence when the maximum sentence to her was 15 years. So that's just a failed judiciary as always. Now, a New South Wales case is Brett Button, infamously the Hunter Valley bus driver who was driving high on painkillers and killed 10 people, injuring, I believe it was another 25 people he injured. Neither of these people were driving on cannabis. They were driving on prescribed medication, and both of them were tested and caught. Now, Brett Button got quite a fitting sentence, about 33 years in prison. I should, however, note that he is appealing that, and it's going before the Court of Appeal, I believe, on the 3rd of October next month. So, yes, he will appeal that, and we'll see what happens there, but I think 33 years is more than fair for killing 10 innocent people.
Because our roadside drug tests don't test for opioids, even though it potentially has worse effects, and often it doesn't control their condition or relieve their condition like medicinal cannabis does. So it's absolutely cruel that our laws haven't kept up with the fact that medicinal cannabis is now legal. So let's just do this.
Come on, Chris Means, if you won't get it done, I will. I've got a bill before the Parliament which does make our driving laws fair so that medicinal cannabis patients can drive. Just do it. It's time.
So, Kate, do you plan to make drink driving legal as well? Let's play this out. You drive a car, you hold a full New South Wales driver's licence, so your legal breath alcohol limit is 0.050. Now, some people might be impaired at as little as 0.020, and some people might not get impaired to 0.08 because of natural tolerance to alcohol. If you're an alcoholic, 0.050 you're probably fully functional at. But we all tend to agree, once you're at 0.050, that you are over the limit, and therefore you've committed an offence. Now, I already know the dumb argument that Kate would respond with. That, well, drug testing does not test for levels like the alcohol testing does. Nope, that's a bullshit argument we get from Greens politicians and the Cannabis Party all the time. The first thing you need to understand is roadside drug testing devices like this, have a 10 nanogram per milliliter cutoff for cannabis. So that means, for you to get that little red line that says you are positive, you must have at least 10 nanograms per milliliter in your oral fluid. Now, the Australian standard does not require proof of 10. It only requires proof of 5. At that point, we can say you are positive for cannabis. Now, scientific research, primarily that done by Marilyn Hustis, has actually indicated that impairment for people starts at about 1 or 2 nanograms per milliliter, just like impairment for people with alcohol starts at about 0.050. Someone who smokes weed regularly, absolutely they're going to have a higher tolerance than 1 or 2 nanograms per milliliter. They could probably get to about 4 or 5 times that amount or higher before they're impaired. But we have a consistent cutoff. Now, what New South Wales Police and New South Wales Health have done is actually quite fair. They've taken the Australian standard, 4760/2019, which only requires proof of 5 nanograms per milliliter, and they've implemented a cutoff of 10 in the lab. So already, to get charged by police for drug driving, you have to be about 5 to 10 times what one of the world's leading experts on cannabis believes impairment starts at, and double what the Australian standard says is detectable cannabis levels. So I've just read Kate's bill, and this is basically it. There's not much to it. It's just amending section 111. And the thing that blows my mind, when she said
to stay on pharmaceuticals like opioids for chronic pain, and they can drive.
Yeah, when she said that crap, this is the exact same section of the Road Transport Act that makes driving with opioids in your system illegal. So, I don't get this. Now, I would have a very real concern about this because it doesn't put any limit to what is allowed in your system. And we do have cases like, Alternaleaf, Dispense, those sorts of online cannabis dispensaries. They'll give you 3 grams of 33% THC a day as a prescription. That is ridiculous. That is a dangerous amount. There is no way anyone could take that and not be stoned. And this bill would effectively legalise driving with that amount of cannabis in your system because it is prescribed. Prescribed does not mean that a medical practitioner has carefully reviewed whether or not the drug is appropriate and whether or not the dose is appropriate, because online cannabis dispensaries exist. So Kate, if you actually were interested in a fair test, what you could do is amend it so that the lab could come up with a level with the advice of a clinical toxicologist or a pharmacologist of what amount of cannabis, THC, could be in someone's system that is not likely to impair a long-term chronic user of cannabis. So obviously, the 5 nanogram per milliliter cutoff, you're not likely to be impaired if you've built up a substantial tolerance to that amount. But we at the moment don't have anything better because we've got members of parliament making knee-jerk decisions like, let's completely across the board make it legal to drive with any amount of weed in your system because you took 15 minutes to get an online prescription. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching.